In the interest of staying on time, I think I'll thank Nadine for a wonderful presentation, and then move on to our next panel discussion on outreach and opportunities in STEM. That's going to be moderated by our own Laura Schultz, who is a professor and also the associate department head for DEIJ in Brain and Cognitive Sciences. Laura, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, thanks everyone for organizing this amazing symposium. My name is Laura Schultz. I'm a professor in the Department of Brain and Cognitive Sciences, the PEI of the Early Childhood Cognition Lab, and associate department head for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice. It's a privilege to be here with you this afternoon to moderate our panel discussion, Outreach and Opportunities in STEM. An important theme of this symposium is recognizing and removing barriers of many kinds that prevent people from reaching their full potential. Today, I have the honor of introducing an outstanding panel of speakers who are working hard to redress injustices, broaden access, and create a more welcoming environment for training in science and engineering, and from student leaders who have contributed to these programs and can share their experiences and perspectives. Through this discussion, I'm hoping we can all learn together about work to increase equity and opportunity at MIT and in this department, what is meant for participants, and what more we should be advocating for and aspiring to do. Our first speaker will be Ebony Hearn, Executive Director of MIT Office of Engineering and Outreach Programs. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Hector de Jesus Cortez, a postdoc in the Picower Institute and founder and co-director of Sagrado MIT Neuroscience College Programs. Then we'll hear from Jinyi Chu, a PhD student in my lab who has been a mentor in this space, and two of the outstanding students she has worked with, Kayland Casa-Major, a recent graduate of Howard University, head to the Masters in Data Science program at Columbia University, and a BCS MIT Summer Research Program alumna, and Leora Jones, a graduating senior at Torrington High School in Connecticut and a research intern. Last, we'll hear from Tyler Bonin, a PhD student at Stanford University and an alumnus of the MIT BCS Post-Baccalaureate Research Scholars Program. Ebony, I'll go ahead and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can you all hear me well? Excellent. So good afternoon, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. This has been an amazing morning and afternoon so far. As already mentioned, I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the MIT Office of Engineering Outreach Programs in the School of Engineering. We currently provide transformative experiences for high-achieving pre-college students from underserved backgrounds that build confidence, create lifelong community, foster success, and really focus on advancing opportunity, access, and equity in STEM. I like to think of it as getting young folks jazzed about careers in STEM and equipping them with the tools and resources they need to be successful in middle, high school, college, career, and all of the transitional points in between. Our programs currently work with about 365 middle and high school students from our local community and across the country. And we have 3 different programs. We run them in the summer, on Saturdays during the academic year. When not experiencing the pandemic, we're usually in person, but we've also been working online in hybrid experiences. We had been running an online program for 10 years, so we were pretty prepared to transition. Through the years, we've worked with over 5,000 young folks, a majority identifying as Black and African American, Hispanic, Latinx, Native, and Indigenous, most from families experiencing economic hardship, and also most will be the first in their family to have the opportunity to go to college. And we've been had some great success with our scholars going on to pursue degrees in STEM fields and careers in STEM fields. To date, roughly 80% of our young folks have gone on to earn a bachelor's degree in a STEM field, and about 3% of the MIT undergraduate population participated in an OALP program as a middle or high school student. And if they're not attending MIT, which we do try and keep in touch with everyone and understand where they're off to after our programs in middle and high school, they're going on to the top competitive colleges across the country. And after college, many go on to graduate school. Several have made it to the ranks of faculty. They're pursuing all types of amazing careers in and out of STEM. And our alumni tell us that our programs help to level the playing field and help them to get to places in their academic and personal journeys that didn't seem possible. And this is for a multitude of reasons. Some of them share with us that they're coming from academic deserts, or that they're in places where folks don't do, what they do in terms of their interest in STEM, or they may not have other individuals to look up to that have been to the types of institutions they'd like to go to. They may not be receiving one-on-one guidance and attention around college and career planning. Some of them have actually shared with us, and I too have had this experience where folks say, people like you don't go to places like MIT, and other untruths about who they are and who they're not. So I've been extremely humbled by the opportunity to work at MIT and reach young people who need to be celebrated and to have their humanity and dreams seen and supported, and to get proximate, as was mentioned by Mr. Stevenson earlier this morning. In our programs, we do a few things that I think are important when implementing a program designed to diversify STEM. First, we look for talented students from all zip codes and all backgrounds. We introduce them to interesting and culturally relevant topics in STEM. It is important that we maintain high rigor and high expectations and communicate our belief that our scholars can rise to the challenge. We do not approach this work with a deficit mindset, but with a strengths-based mindset. We help our students connect with peers and mentors and role models that empower them to pursue their biggest dreams in college and beyond. We also work intentionally to support their activism, their social, emotional, and mental health, things that we've heard about throughout the day today. In other words, we provide a very holistic experience that isn't just about doing science well. We do that too, because we are at MIT. But we know that our scholars come to us as whole folks with a complexity of experiences before they arrive at 77 Massachusetts Avenue. And as executive director, I have the privilege of speaking to alumni from our first class of participants in 1975 to our current scholars in 2021. And the takeaways are similar. Students feel more confident in who they are, what they bring, what they've overcome, and what they can accomplish, because they're surrounded by peers and mentors and adults who believe in them and who express that belief and create caring relationships. I've been really, again, privileged to be a part of the OELP. I started this work as a graduate student in 2003. I was instantly drawn to the mission of the Office of Diversifying Science and Engineering Communities, partially driven by my own personal story. I share a lot in common with our scholars. I was the first in my family to graduate college, come from a family that experienced economic hardship, and also in some ways had individuals share what they thought I could and could not accomplish. I call myself a blurred, which is like a Black nerd, totally into science. And so these are some of the experiences that I share with our scholars, and we've had a lot of opportunity to mentor young folks who are phenomenally talented. And so I think about this journey as being able to be a part of the MIT community that is really invested in bringing a voice. There are programs such as the MIT Summer Research Program that works with undergraduate students from across the country, bringing them to MIT to get exposure to what it would take to be successful in graduate school. We have post-baccalaureate programs that work with undergraduates, recent college graduates, to help them also get exposed to what is possible in graduate education. And I think based on the remarks made earlier today from Mr. Stevenson about being proximate and changing the narrative and the problems that were highlighted this morning. And I think about how if our academy was as richly diverse as our population, I think we would see a shift in the types of research questions and problems that we were very interested and invested in solving. And the silence that was mentioned earlier, I think that would also shift. And so I think our programs at MIT that are about broadening participation in the STEM career pathway are critically important to changing the face of STEM. I know there are a lot of times we have many more students that apply to our programs than we can serve. The resources are not always available. We talked about how to scale programs when personal relationships are so critical. So I hope that we can continue to do this work together. I think it's extremely important to continue to bring a voice to the voiceless and to continue to explore and grow on the programs that have been launched at MIT to try and make a difference in the STEM career pathway.
Thank you so much, Ebony. We're just going to move through the whole panel and take questions at the end. So Hector, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I hope you hear me well. Thanks to the whole Picower leadership team and administrators, the JPB Foundation, and dear Barbara Picower for inviting me to talk about my journey and ways that I'm trying to diversify the STEM pipeline of professionals. I agree with Nadine earlier, it's a powerhouse lineup, so it's a privilege and an honor to be part of this, so thank you very much. And what I like about this symposium is that not only we're shining the light on problems, but also offering solutions. So I hope to tell you a little bit of a program that I founded and co-direct. It's called Sagrado MIT Neuroscience Pre-College Program. But before that, I want to tell you a little bit of the context of that. And I want to start because I've been hearing the symposium all day long about stress and how can that pay a toll on us minorities. But Brian Stevenson mentioned something that resonated with me this morning, and it was justice and love, and how he uses love to really enhance his career and always brings back the best of him. And I say that because my family is probably watching me today. So hello, mom, dad, my sisters, my wife. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. And I think it's very important for us minorities to always remember that love and family are very important. So my journey, I always describe it as from a bubble of privilege to becoming a minority and imposter syndrome. I was born and raised in Bayamón, Puerto Rico. It's a little town near San Juan in the metropolitan area. And as you can imagine, as Puerto Rican living in Puerto Rico, you're not a minority. Everyone else is like you. So I was raised and I never really understood that about minority. I heard of it, but really didn't understand it. But then when I moved to the US, I became part of a group of being the only Puerto Rican, the only Latino, the only Hispanic in the room. And then I realized that I was different. And you all know that research is hard and it's time and emotionally consuming. And we have heard today how stress can impact that. So imagine, the stress that we have here being the only ones in the room sometimes. You can appreciate how harder it is to us to succeed. Thankfully, I always have had the privilege of having programs and mentors that have helped me throughout my career. And it started in the university. So when I was at the University of Puerto Rico studying biology and biochemistry, I was like many of my colleagues, working part-time and then studying. So I had no time to really do research. And I really wanted to do research because it was something that I did in high school as a science fair. And I really wanted to, discover treatments. And that was like my idea to become a scientist, but I didn't understand or know how to do it. And I really understood that it took a lot of time. So with classes and the job that I had at the time at Sears, I didn't have time to do anything else. But there was a program called Minority Access for Research Careers. It's an NIH-funded program that gave me the opportunity of quitting my job and do full-time research. That really changed my life. I discovered the passion that I have for neuroscience right now. And then I was able to also go to Minnesota, to Mayo Clinic to do a summer internship. And then I understood what it was to be a PhD. My family, there's no PhDs that I know of. And I didn't understand what was that. So becoming and being part of that program, I was then understood what is it to be a PhD and how you do it. And then I moved to the US because in Puerto Rico, as you may know, there's not a lot of resources to do research, high caliber research. And my mentors told me, you have to push yourself to the limits and go somewhere else to understand how to do research and perhaps bring it back someday to us. So that's what I did. I went to the University of Texas in Southwestern Medical Center to study my PhD in neuroscience. And that's when the becoming minority and imposter syndrome bubble started to arise. I understood that I was different. People treated me different, but to be honest, at that time, I was so focused on doing research that it didn't matter a lot to me. And I wasn't doing much to change that either. Then I met my wife, who's also a scientist. She's a neuropsychologist, an instructor at Harvard Medical School and at Massachusetts General Hospital. And we have been always talking about how impactful those programs that I talked to you about earlier, planted a seed in my head of like, oh my God, these programs can really impact. And it urged me to use my privilege to impact Puerto Rico. Therefore, after a few years of thinking about it, there were other instances. For example, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. So that was really bad for me because I was in Puerto Rico at the time and I really saw the destruction and the need for things to change. I talked to the Secretary of Education and I decided that I needed to create something new. And that's where I came and decided that to come to these universities, to these elite universities like MIT, you have to change the mindset of a dream to a goal. So I think when I was younger, I thought about Harvard, MIT, and it was always a dream, but it was never a goal. And I really want to change that. So I created this program called Sagrado MIT Neuroscience Pre-College Program. It's a program that starts very early in high school, in 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade, those 3 different grades. And it gives seminars and career professional development panels to students from all over the island. But more importantly, we created this program to impact students that are usually not exposed to this type of opportunities. So in the island, you have the metropolitan area like here, and you have these other rural areas. So really focus in trying to get to everyone. We got more than 500 applications the first year. We selected 35 of them, most of them women and from public schools. And I'm happy to say that out of 13 juniors that we had last year, some of them are going to the best universities like Stanford, Yale, Emory, Cornell, Georgia Tech, and others. And the way we know that it worked is the feedback that we got back. And they created a video for us, for me and my wife, saying how impactful this was, that they never even thought about applying to these elite universities, and they were able to because of this type of program. So, and also, I remember my boss, Mark Baer, who is probably here hearing, he gave a talk to my student, and he's the one of the authors of the book that is used of neuroscience at MIT, and he mentions how they were super smart and they should all come to MIT, and that stayed in their mind, and many of them applied and got interviews to come to MIT. So stories like this are not unique. I really want this program to succeed, and I hope to hear any of your questions at the end. Thank you very much. And I think next is graduate students, Junji Chu.
Sure, thanks, Hector. Hi, everyone. So my name is Junyi Chu, and I'm so honored to be here on this panel and to share with you a bit about my experiences as a mentor and launching a high school research internship experience for students during a global pandemic. So first, a bit of motivation. I'm an international student from Singapore, and I've lived and studied in the US just for the past 10 years. And I really enjoyed the aspect of American culture, which is that, innovation is really great and almost anything is possible if you kind of like work really hard for it. So, but at the same time, of course, there's, experiences of navigating new cultures and learning new norms and all of that. So part of what I think I've been really lucky to experience is I actually never really wanted to be a scientist. I had a very narrow view of science when I first arrived here in the US. I wanted to be a teacher, but then I had some amazing professors and mentors in college who suggested that I try out lab research. And after several more years of encouragement and training and meeting amazing scientists at conferences, that's when I started to fall in love with this work and this community. And so throughout all of that, the one-on-one mentorship experience has been really valuable. I think there's no other way to learn to do science and to learn what science is like without that kind of apprenticeship experience. And so I want as many young students as possible to also have that opportunity. So 2 programs I've participated in as a mentor is the summer research program, where I got to work with Kayland. And the other is a high school research internship that we started last summer, where I got to work with Leora and 10 other high school students. And we've just completed a second spring cohort with 6 new students, some of which might continue on in the summer. And so that's just been a really wonderful learning opportunity for myself as well. So this internship program is a work in progress. So I'll just talk very briefly about 3 things I think that can make it successful and impactful moving forward before passing on the time to Kaylin and Leora. So one important factor, I think, is having meaningful activities. So when the pandemic started a year ago and all the schools were closing and summer camps and other opportunities were also closing, that was really a big motivation to launch this internship. Right. And part of what we wanted was to ensure a really immersive and hands-on experience where students can closely engage with the day-to-day of doing science and learn that anyone can do science, even if you're just working from home kind of on your computer. And we were really lucky in our lab to have a huge data set of over 1,000 videos of infants on an experiment that needed to be processed and worked on, and that could be done remotely. And so half the time our summer students were producing work for the lab, really creating work of value. And the other half of the time was spent on academic and professional development. So we had weekly journal clubs, we had workshops on how to design experiments, we had, growing up in science talks from other graduate students, postdocs, and professors in the department so that everyone could get a broader picture on the different paths in science and maybe debunk some myths on what it means to participate in science. And all of that kind of culminated in a final project where students could apply those skills to a topic of personal interest and present their ideas to the lab. So that's sort of what that first summer internship looked like. And one other factor that was really helpful to make this successful is to have meaningful partnerships with the community. So we wanted to be able to kind of redistribute some of the opportunities and resources available to students who needed it the most. So we have ongoing partnerships with Somerville High School, which is a local public school, and also with Black Girls Code, which is a nonprofit aiming to empower young women of color in science and technology. And these organizations really, they're the experts in what students need. So we work with them to recruit students and to discuss how our internship activities can align with their college and career readiness plans. And I think finally, it's important to have resources to make all of this happen. I'm just one graduate student who happened to have a project available that could support students working on it for a few weeks. But what if we had all these partnerships across labs, across departments? I think Ebony has really wonderful programs at the School of Engineering. So how can we bring that to the School of Science? How can we train mentors to make sure they have access to anti-harassment training and know how to work with students from diverse backgrounds? How can we get computers and internet connectivity to all the students so that anyone can work and participate? How can we really lower the barrier to participation and make our science accessible? And I think there's just so many ways we can think about how to do that in our own labs. So that was really brief. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but I'll now pass over the time to Kaylin to share more about her experience.
Thank you, Junie. Hello, everyone. My name is Kaylin. I am a new graduate of Howard University, where I majored in biology and psychology. And I am so honored to be here and talk about my time in the MSRP program, or MIT's summer research program, where I worked with Junie and Dr. Schultz. And I am happy to take any questions afterward. So last summer, I came into the MSRP program where I worked with Junie, and the structure of the program I found to be really, really helpful despite everything that had occurred, given COVID and the pandemic and the shutdown. MSRP was structured where we had pods in which we had individual groups of people where there are about 3 or 4 other MSRP participants. And that was, despite it being virtual, it was an opportunity for us to have more intimate time with each other while asking each other questions, studying with each other, asking each other questions about each other's project, and just getting that time to bond with other students in STEM. And we also were paired and mentored with PALs, or graduate students, in the biology department, cognitive sciences department. And it helped me to really broaden my network of individuals that are heavily involved in cognitive science research and computational neuroscience research. And as someone that was majoring in biology and psychology, kind of gave me some insight as to different career avenues and fields that I can pursue after graduation, and what I'm interested and what I'm not interested, and really explore those avenues with other individuals in the program who do identify as African-American, Latinx, Asian, from diverse groups of individuals. And I come from a college or university, it's called HBCU. So Howard University is a historically Black college university, where we have amazing researchers and everything like that, and faculty and students. But a lot of times, while there is need at HBCUs, what has been helpful throughout my journey is having individuals reach out holistically, as Ebony did say at the beginning, which I really liked, holistically reaching out and making sure that there is authentic communication among students, partners, PIs, graduate students, and that there's this sense of community while still giving students access to resources that may not be available at their home institutions. And I found that in the MSRP program, while I was working with Junie, there was that support throughout the summer research program, where we had that one-on-one conversations, we had one-on-one check-ins. I got to learn a new programming language, which I had a little bit experience before, but I was able to learn some more with Junie. And regarding my own experience as a student from an HBCU, while there is need, I do want to emphasize that even though there is need in a lot of our communities, and as minoritized people, we come from so much strength despite the need that does exist at our institutions. And so when we do come into these spaces, when we do come into different labs, in different groups, to expand our knowledge, to learn more and have access to these communities, it's from a place of not necessarily running away or trying to detach ourselves from our home communities, but from a place where we understand where we come from, and we're going to bridge that gap and still come back and contribute to the communities that we do come from. So, and that's much of my experience with Howard University and coming and doing internship program with MIT. It's been an honor talking with you all, and I'm open to questions afterwards. And I think, yes, Leora is coming. Yes, next.
Hello, my name is Leora, and I'm currently a senior in high school in Connecticut, and I plan to study cognitive science at Wellesley College in the fall. For a long time, I've always had an interest in the social sciences, specifically in human-computer interaction. And during my high school years, I spent a lot of my free time studying these subjects through reading books in my library and watching lectures, and trying to apply the knowledge that I learned through my own personal projects. But as I immersed myself more into these subjects, I kind of realized that I wanted to pursue a career in this field, specifically in academic research. As I learned more about human-computer interaction and psychology, I definitely had a lot of questions that I wanted to get answered, and I wanted to be able to explore these questions in more depth. I didn't know what I wanted to focus on, and even now there's still a lot of areas within human-computer interaction that I want to explore, but I knew that I did want to be able to expose myself to an academic research environment in some way while I was in high school, just to know more about the reality of being a researcher and acquiring insights about it so that I can determine whether this was something I wanted to pursue. When I saw that the Early Childhood Cognition Lab was hosting a summer research internship, it drew me to it because it aligned with my interest in the social sciences. And I thought that being an intern would allow me to acquire more information about cognitive science and develop the skills that I would need to conduct my own research in the future. So during my internship, I can definitely say that the experience I had working at the lab exceeded my expectations. Not only was I able to study and learn more about designing and conducting research, but I was also able to gain a mentor and also make new friends along the way. And I was also able to attend my first research conference, which I definitely didn't think I was going to do. And I was also able to learn more about cognitive science, which is an area of study that I wasn't extremely familiar with before. What drew me to cognitive science was just the interdisciplinary nature of the field. It really combined my interest in psychology, computer science, and artificial intelligence. Overall, I'm really grateful for having been able to work at the Early Childhood Cognition Lab and helping Junie with the baby physics project. And I really think that the opportunities like these for students to be able to pursue their interests in the way I was able to would be very beneficial to their personal and professional development. But yeah, I guess I'll pass it on to Tyler.
Thanks so much. It's really nice to be here. It's also, I think it's a really nice opportunity for me to hear about the other stories and experiences that folks are coming to this work with. I really appreciate it. I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, but Kailandi, I really appreciated your point there at the end about how we're coming to this work with so much, right? As folks from underrepresented communities, we are coming to this work with whole worlds of ideas, of commitments, whole new ways of engaging with the world in research that currently aren't represented within the academy a lot. So currently, anyway, that's just a direct response. Currently, I'm a graduate student at Stanford. My name is Tyler, he, him. I use biologically plausible computational models, neural data, and animal behavior in order to understand memory systems within the mammalian brain. My hope is that later on in my scientific career, I can use these tools to understand the neurobiology of trauma and how we can help people heal from acute psychological injuries. For me, this is not an abstract question. This is not a curiosity. I grew up and throughout my adolescence, as a young man of color from a low-income community in Miami-Dade County, I spent my adolescent years mired within the criminal justice system. Rehabs, hospitals, jail cells, psych wards, detention centers. I was the kind of population that was being studied by the university. I was not the kind of population that was studying other people. One of the most transformative experiences for me in the midst of all of this institutional, what I experienced as, and what I think we now know to be a lot of institutional violence against myself, my family, my communities. In the midst of all of that, I got really lucky. One, I had like a really good judge, Judge Johnson. And two, I got like randomly slated into this randomized control trial study for young kids with lots of problems. And in that study, they treated me not just like an individual human being, but they treated me and my family. They treated me and my community. They treated me not as an isolated problem for society to solve or exclude, right? But they treated me as a member of a community, and they asked, what can we do to help heal that community, which has been so wronged? Anyway, so I ended up getting out of a lot of those really challenging circumstances. I ended up getting out of a lot of those institutions that were doing so much harm. And I was committed to, because of my experiences, helping other people escape from those institutions as well, helping other people heal from the traumas that they had experienced. For me, that took the form first as doing social and environmental justice work throughout the United States and Sub-Saharan Africa. This meant working with young people around the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline and trying to make sure that we were protecting each other from police, that we were protecting each other from a lot of, again, just the institutional contexts that were doing so much damage to young Black and brown kids. That took on a lot of different shapes. And at some point I got really interested in education. At some point I got really interested in kind of just going back to school, and I dropped out of high school when I was 17. I was like, let me go back to school. Let me become a public school teacher. Let me work inside these spaces. And when I was there, I was at a community college. I was working to put myself through school, working full time. And there was really this weird, again, another lucky opportunistic experience. There was a little table that said, hey, like, if you study science, we'll pay for your education. And I was like, no way, these people are joking, right? Like, I would love to get paid to go to school. I was really enjoying my studies. I was having just a great, like, I was like reading stuff and learning. I was happy in a lot of ways. There were great teachers at the community college. And so I started studying science because it helped me study for free. And in that process, I went from being interested in chemistry and different things, transferred to Columbia University where I was an undergrad. And at some point at Columbia University, after transferring from Miami-Dade College, at some point at Columbia University, I started learning about the neurobiology of trauma. I started learning about how experience is consolidated throughout the mammalian brain and throughout the nervous system more generally. I started seeing how the scientific practices that I had so recently come to be invigorated by related to the initial things that made me want to be in the world and not just hide and die, right? And so I got really excited about the possibility of using science to understand trauma and to help people with that understanding. As I'm sure anybody who has ever asked any of these questions and like typed in a little Google query, exactly what you do with that is not straightforward at all. Where you go, where I went from having this clear motivation and wanting to use science to help people by understanding the brain. Where to go from there is really not straightforward. There's a lot of, I'm sure as you all know, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of people who are kind of disingenuous about what their work is and the consequences of their work and how their work can be useful for people. Because they're trying to get jobs, they're trying to whatever, it's really hard to look out at the literature and to understand what is going to be useful. How can I be helpful? Not just a job, but for the communities.
Sorry to interrupt, Tyler. We're losing you. Can you please turn off your camera and proceed with audio only?
So in 1 minute, so what I ended up doing at MIT as a part of the post-baccalaureate scholarship program was really getting an incredible amount of expertise, an incredible amount of wisdom from a lot of the researchers that were there that helped me figure out. So I'm going to wrap up just because I'm not sure if anybody can hear me. The experiences that were provided to me at MIT, the opportunity to learn about where to fit in. Oh, you can. Great. Perfect. Those experiences for me were transformational. Those experiences for me gave me they didn't show me where I needed to be per se. They helped me see and to learn how I could look out into the scientific literature and find that guiding light for myself. I had an incredible amount of mentorship and support, not just from Laura, who's here, but also from Rebecca Sachs. Rebecca Sachs's insights and the things that Rebecca shared with me about the limitations of human neuroimaging work ended up bringing me into a space where I'm doing now computational work. I'm doing a bunch of other things that would never have even occurred to me, just from the kind of naive place that I came to when I initially applied. So anyway, I'll stop there. Apologies for the auditory, the visual auditory issues, and really looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks so much, Tyler, and to each and every one of you. As I said at the beginning, this is going to be an outstanding panel of speakers, and I wish we had time to have a whole workshop basically from each of them, because I think they have a lot of wisdom and experience to offer. We are open for questions and thoughts. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the Q&A. And I would also encourage folks in the panel to ask questions of each other if you want to bounce back from anything we heard here. And I will also recognize that we are actually very, very near to time. So if we don't have questions, I don't think we want to take up any time from our next speaker either, but I'll give it one more minute just in case there are any concluding thoughts. All right, well, I just want to say it's been a real privilege and a pleasure to get to work with those of you I have, and I look forward to working more with those of you I have not had a chance to. I think there are a lot of opportunities here and a lot of wisdom to be gained. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Laura, and special thanks to all the panelists. It was really wonderful. I think having that personal, but also very insightful, inspirational perspective was really great.